Hey guys, welcome back to Mind Your Feed. My name's Jessica Harrison, and I have my co counselor here, Daniel
Hello.
Torres. And we're not going to stay on camera the whole time, but I kind of wanted you to introduce you to him. And today we're back talking about men's mental health since it is Men's Mental Health Month all month long. And we are going to just check in with Daniel and see what he has for us today. So stay tuned. Here we go. All right, Daniel. So it's Men's Mental Health Month. Where do you want to go today?
I thought we could talk a little bit about fatherhood, where that's been, where it's going, maybe in other relationships too, romantic ones, and where common ground lies between the past and the present, with finding a wife or a mother or dating in general. What addictions play in that? What roles they play in finding those relationships? So I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, so we're going to look at like maybe fatherhood in general and relationships. Okay, and maybe they're all things associated with that.
Sure.
Okay, so let's start with this fatherhood concept. What do you got for us?
So I think maybe generationally, being a father, like let's say Gen X in the past and even to now, it's been a little different for the modern generation raising kids, especially with screens. Yeah, that's been a big change for how people raise their kids, right? So let's say just a father and mother, let's say both parents raising their kids, with the modern child not necessarily having just a TV, but access to the world through the through their phone or through a tablet or some way, right? And not just at your home, but at every home, and even in public, even in the car, at a restaurant, everywhere they go. So really trying to compete with the screen sometimes um, is kind of hard to do, and for where kids get the most benefit out of parenting. And I think we talked about last week, if y'all listened last week about the stressors for some of men and how that works, and all those stressors still exist even as a father, uh, and so those kind of overlap sometimes when you're trying to raise a boy or raise a girl. Um, like I said, competing for that attention, and sometimes just as I'll say, as I'm a dad, and trying to compete with that is hard unnecessarily, and I have to check myself, or
Mhm.
mom and I have to check ourselves with, you know what, they don't need a screen while we clean the house or try to do stuff on the patio, because that there's something else they could do. But it really just becomes the easiest thing to do sometimes, and I think that also factors in, kind of branching out here, but it kind of factors in with both parents having to work. Um, both parents having a lot to do, and screens being the primary easy way, just like back in the day it was like, TV raised your kid. Everybody kind of had something like that in their life or knows about it. um, a kid who was raised by the TV. But it's kind of uh, exponentially, I'll say, worse, because it really hasn't gotten a lot better, um, as far as screens being more effective or better for your kid at raising them than parents. So really, I think attention with children is the kind of the emphasis here. They're getting less attention in a lot of ways from parents, but the ones who are more conscious of it, those kids are kind of standing out. Those kids are the ones with better manners, usually the ones who are more aware uh, socially, and they're better at taking accountability for their actions, more empathy, all the things we would usually see in the past too, which was kind of normal childhood, where you could just turn off the TV and there's nothing else the kid can really get a hold of as far as the screen goes. But now they have it everywhere, so you really have to be hyper vigilant, kind of, as a parent, to make sure whether they're at somebody else's house or your own, that they stay away from these things, that they get the proper attention from adults.
Okay. So that really focused on the kids part and what's going on there. But what, to me, so like, what's the mental health part for the father in that?
Yeah, so dads,
Why is it happening? Why are we giving kids screens as adults?
kids in general, in general, I'd say adults, dads, maybe the role in the past was primarily breadwinner, and mom maybe had uh, more to do at home, right? Let's say typical roles. Uh, Now,
Breadwinner homemaker.
yes, breadwinner homemaker, and now both parents and sometimes have to split this or wait, and I think justifiably so. More dads, were made aware that they need to be more uh, in touch with their kids' lives, um, and that makes sense. That should be happening. At the same time, mom is also less available in the home, so she's out working. Uh, and the easiest thing to do when you have a stressful work life with two working parents is to put the kid in front of something that makes them less of a stressor. Sometimes that's what it is, um, or they're like an extra babysitter sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly where parents and dads fall short with their kids. And I think it's something we all need to pay more attention to.
So what you're saying is that they're living a stressful life, and so in a way to kind of like detach from some of the other roles that are also stressful, they utilize tools, um, such as devices, phones, TVs, all the things, for their children that actually takes them further away from relationship with them. But what's the stress behind being a husband, a dad, a man, a person that's contributing to society in the workforce, all of these different roles? Because what I find is we're constantly switching hats,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes we're wearing multiple hats at the same time. So, how is that causing stress regarding men?
Yeah, so men wearing all these hats, right? I forgot to say this earlier too, but we're even coping ourselves as men by being on screens more.
Mm,
And so we're also modeling that for kids. It's because of our own stressors, because of our own hats that we're wearing. We're coming home not just giving the kid a screen, putting a screen in front of us. So now the child learns to handle stress, to handle your day. It is to whip out your phone, or does it play hours of video games, kind of neglect the family,
yeah.
like that type of thing, but not out of any
Detach.
right, detach, but which ends up sometimes being something like neglect because you're away from your family. If you're neglecting their emotions or your children in some kind of way, right, it can go there. Not that it goes there for everybody, but it can, and it's a slippery slope sometimes. So dealing with work, you come home, uh, and let's say
So is that just a lack of being able to have like the correct amount of energy you're putting into specific places if you're stressed, right? Because if I have all of these things, am I just not doing a good job of um, adequately only, allowing so much of my energy in certain places? What's happening?
yes, I think that's fair to say. It's almost like a compartmentalization of resources, of attention and emotion. So if you're not really aware of how you're feeling with certain, let's say you like go back to hats, right? Whatever hat you're wearing, not bringing certain stressors home, not being able to really regulate yourself using certain devices, like you said, tools earlier, screens, alcohol, video games, on top of screens, porn, whatever those things are that help you de-stress. You're using these things maladaptively because you haven't really taken the time or haven't learned or weren't raised with certain strategies that would allow you to really help yourself. So
Mhm.
it becomes this situation with kids, especially when you're raising them.
Yeah. I kind of find that whenever I'm working with gentlemen, one of the things that happens is they're like, "Well, I only have like 4 hours
Yeah.
to," or that my time is spent in this 3-hour window that I get to have, and it's not about being selfish.
Mm.
It's about like literally trying to recharge their own battery by taking space, doing their own thing, finding a way to have fun, um, pleasure seeking, whatever it is. And but it comes from a scarcity mindset
Mhm.
as opposed to an abundance mindset, because like I only have so much time, I only have so much energy, I only have so much emotional capacity, I only have, and when I'm spent, I'm spent.
Right. Yeah. So I think having the mindset that, like you said, a deficit, if you're always in that mindset, then you're almost kind of in an anxious mode constantly.
Mm,
Uh, and so you're really not setting up, almost kind of like a money situation, right? If you're always thinking you're going to be broke, or you're always thinking, so you spend your money differently now, as opposed to maybe investing specific time into things that maybe bring long-term joy, better commitment to relationships, understanding that sometimes seeking pleasure in the moment isn't necessarily going to actually relieve some of the anxiety that you may be facing long term. Um, and so, if you're always thinking in this anxious mindset, you're going to be staying in the moment in a negative way, and kind of being in a cycle. And that's
yeah.
where you're going to find your cycle constantly.
Well, let's talk about you mentioned finances, so I kind of think about this because although the times have changed, and like you said, both men and women are in the workforce, and there is the reality that there are some women who have more earning power than other men, and those are just the realities of the time. But for some reason, one thing that has persisted um, is that men still highly,
Oh yeah.
believe that they need to be the provider, need to be the breadwinner, need to be the protector, need to secure the finances, whatever that looks like. And it's a role that is taken pretty seriously. And so talk to me about fatherhood and finances and
Oh,
how that could potentially create some mental health struggles.
I think you're touching on a soft point on the ego of a lot of men,
Mm,
specifically on where your role is and what you should be and ought to be doing. I think this is where I spoke earlier about the generational mindsets of that typical role of being the breadwinner, and there's a homemaker.
mm-hmm.
Now there's two breadwinners, which is honestly necessary for getting a house, which a lot of
most
people, yeah,
most people.
most people with a family, specifically to raise children. Now that role, so you have that mindset of this is the way it ought to be, maybe raised by an older generation, that's the way it's always been. And now this generation is it's kind of the first, I would say, overlapping with the older millennials, with or younger millennials, where you kind of have to have two jobs, and maybe your that isn't your, let's say, selling point on the dating market for you to find a partner who wants to be with you, and we're like, okay, well, this is what I bring to the table. It's not necessarily, it's kind of a need now, that since both people have it, that maybe your role as a man isn't quite, it's kind of diminished in a certain
Oh,
way.
okay. Well, I will say this because I talk to a lot of young people. I say young people, people who are in the portion of their life where they're looking to settle down, have a mate, all those things. And that is changing also. It's not necessarily always super young people. But when people are getting ready, I would say, let's say that that's 25 to 42 kind of age range, and especially women. And, you know, interestingly enough, as much as we want to say, that there has been a change and we see the world differently, many of the people who I have talked to for, I don't know how long I've been doing
Hmm.
this, for a long time, um, still want a man to be the provider, despite the fact that they may have college education and that they may want to be a person who works. They want to see more of their funds like being like, I'll consider them as fun, like things that we get to do. We can take
Hmm.
trips with this money or whatever, but also be able to have the freedom to, if I just choose not to work anymore, that I don't have to do that anymore. And what kind of pressure does that put on a man? Just
Well,
curious.
yeah, well, you brought that up quick, faster than I would have brought that up. But yes,
Well, it's
yeah,
true. And
yeah.
we have to, if we're going to have these conversations, like we might as well
So this is what I was saying about diminished, right? Because in some ways, I'll say that the power of it is diminished because a lot of women are saying, well, I can what's that song? I can buy myself flowers.
Oh gosh,
right,
yeah,
that is a mindset.
yes,
That is a mindset where it's like, I don't need you, but I kind of do, but I don't want you to let me, it's this kind of role in society that's kind of prevalent with kind of modern for women.
Well,
it's
it's
a lot
this a
different.
relationship of convenience.
Yes.
Is what it has really transitioned to. Like, what can you do for me?
Mhm.
What do you bring to the table? And the women have really taken that role of asking those questions, where I don't see that as prevalent in the men. Men are really just looking to have a mate, someone to do all the primal things with,
Mhm.
like have children potentially, live in the house, do the things.
And I would even say that's true. And I would even say with this this modern influence on some of women who, I say a lot of women now who are living this lifestyle, there's actually now a very small group of women who are just seeking a traditionally conservative man that now is not. There's a lot less of them because a lot of men who have seen this, heard this outcry of relationship and convenience, are now going to the red pill movement.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's kind of
well, we saw that, I think, in the election, right? Like the younger and younger people.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, like, we have to be honest with ourselves. Like 89% of counties shifted to the right. And I think what you're saying when you say red is not even like just like conservative, but like really far, really like the pendulum swing kind of situation.
super traditional,
hyper traditional.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's that whole thing, trad wife, online. Like, that's a thing. We're talking about minding our feet. That's a thing we're seeing. I mean, I don't know about that show, like the Mormon Wives, that's a whole thing. Like there is this movement, and you are seeing people who are online, especially women, talking about like taking a step back from things and saying things like, we were promised this bag of goods with like going to college and getting jobs and doing all these things, and they feel like kind of like it wasn't worth it to them anymore, and they're turning away from it. And again, that pushing to the other end.
Right. So, and again, I know this is a men's book, but a lot of what men do are in relation to getting a mate, getting, like I said last time, getting a woman, right? Somebody who wants to be with you.
Finding a partner.
We'll call it that. I'm speaking from the mindset of the young guy who's like,
it's primal.
That's what I mean. Right.
It's primal.
Of like, if I'm going based on something kind of shallow, like saying like some kind of relationship market where you're like, well, what do I bring to the table? Why do I need to, what I thought we were, men and women are working from different angles already in a relationship. And so now I'd say the modern setup has, I would say, like you said earlier, women maybe feel tricked, but not necessarily. The movement they were promised was promised by a lot of people on their own side.
Yeah, other women,
right?
Yes, like, well, I think about it as like, oh, well, you need to do this. It's going to make sure that you have a life. You're going to have your own money. You're going to have, and I'm not opposed to that as a working woman. I think that definitely has its value, and we don't have to diminish things like people who choose to stay at home, or people who choose to be homemakers, or people who choose to leave careers and go be full-time moms at home. Like, and I think there is a little judgment on both sides of that topic.
I'll say this, where I saw this firsthand, where I didn't really bring it up because it would have not been good. But in my master's program, a lot of the women, right, they went ahead and got their, I was like, well, how are you doing this full time, right? Well, their husbands are working, right? And then they got the degree and they just didn't do anything with it, right? So they
tend to be over or higher educated, more educated, and a lot of times it is because like that type of situation. Do we have other situations where they go straight from bachelor's, not unmarried, go to get master's, different things? Absolutely. But a lot comes from situations where the husband's working maybe even a blue collar type of job, putting the wife helping as a family make family goals, and that is prioritizing the wife's dreams um, over their own dreams. And I have seen that more so than I have seen the other way around. Just
Man,
saying.
you're opening these doors for me, so I'm going to take them.
Take them.
Okay.
Go.
So I would say these are some of those points that men would like to discuss openly of like, wow, how convenient for this woman to have this lifestyle while I work for her and everything else, right? And if then now that she has the job, we're seeing also higher divorce rates of those women who are like, okay, he helped me get this. I'm going to go leave now because now I have my own thing.
Yeah.
So it was convenient being used. That's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Where the other end of that is, like, say, let's put it back to the 50s, where women had no choice but to stay.
Yes.
Where now it's almost an overcorrection or even some kind of vindictive cultural thing happening, where men are just used, right?
Yeah.
And so the honest men who are like, oh, I'm building this for us, he's kind of just a 4 or 5 year standby till she finishes her degree.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah.
That happens more now than ever. And that's hard for a lot of men who see this. They again jump back to the red pill movement of treating women a very specific way. Now, I think,
or wanting to keep them in like very specific places and spaces,
right? It
like,
creates even more shallow area.
Yeah, more dependence on me, less independence.
Right.
Type
And
of
so
situation.
The point being, there's a mutual trust being broken of like, we both want these things together.
I 100% on that.
That is very hard.
There's a big time mistrust between that.
What happens for a lot of men is because still more of the weight, unless there's a child involved, more of the weight lies on the man to give up more and up front and then be used, right? So there's a allergic reaction.
What do you think that is?
Why do I think
that there's the pressure for a man to give more up front sometimes?
I would.
Is that like, I mean, a servant heart? What does that come from? Tell me.
Oh man, so I mean, the
women don't hate me. We're just having a conversation here.
I'm giving the perspective. That's my job here. Give that perspective. So the idea that right, I mean, actually, a lot of the memes. There's a meme, I saw a few memes where like, when you give him all the hints and he still doesn't ask for your number, and the next meme says the hint, and you're looking at your phone, sitting still far away from him, and you're like, oh, I guess he's not Mr. Right. Right? So who has to be the one to walk up?
Yeah.
Who has the one to be told no? Majority of his life.
Yeah.
I know so many women who's like, oh, I've never walked up to a man and asked. That'd be scary.
Well, I'll tell you this, interestingly enough, and I shared this with a group of very young people, middle school aged people, and they were just like shocked. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. But growing up, if we were asked out on a date and we were saying we were open to dating, and someone asked us, one thing that my parents would not allow for is for us to say no. You could say, yes, we'll go as friends, yes, whatever, but there was not a no, because what they knew that I didn't know then, and what they were accounting for was, first of all, you need to be able to go and communicate and have lunch with people who are just friendly with. Right. And even if you're not totally comfortable, it's a great opportunity for you to be uncomfortable and get the experience. The other thing is that what you exactly said is that young men are the ones who have to experience the rejection. And what harm is it for you to give them a yes, even if it's not a long-term yes? Right. And it's not false hope. It is direct communication, and it's honesty. And it still says, I value you, and that you're not, because saying no and not going with them would be repulsive. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, just as much as women can get caught in automatic negative thoughts, men have the same tendencies to feel bad about themselves and to not feel accepted or worthy. Right. And so Yes, and if you could have seen the middle school faces, that the reaction that I got, they could not. They were just like, "Miss, I'm so sorry. Your parents made you. I can't believe they did that to you." And I was just like, I'm actually so grateful for it because just like today, I can sit and have an honest conversation with you here, and we don't have to be threatened by anything. We're both married. There's no weird things going on here, and we can still have this conversation.
Yeah, I think it's invaluable for men specifically. It's different for men sexually, hormonally,
Yeah.
for up until I'll say your 40s, probably when T drops or testosterone drops.
Yeah.
But like, to really see, it's really valuable to have female friends or no females where that's not happening, but you're able to sit and be comfortable, and vice versa for a woman not to be scared to be around a guy, right? So there has to be something mutual. Again, that mutual trust and respect, just as a society of like kindness.
Do you think that we've lost that because of all of these like apps and the the ghosting and the like men and women both meeting up with other single men or women, and later it being discovered that they have a family and they have, they're cheating on their husband with you, and you've been in this 6-month relationship with them that's a total lie, and so like everything becomes like this house of cards that's ready to come down all the time.
Yes, there are so many things interfering with the mutual trust. The online aspect is probably number one right now. Where, yeah, I'll say just phones in general, apps. There's, I mean, what direction to take? Okay, so I'll go with this one. Let's say men not walking up to people, right? Men aren't learning the skills that it takes because it's still primarily up to men to make the move, right?
Yeah.
Aren't learning these skills anymore because they're online. They're online dating, or they're delayed in that they'll wait until they're late 20s to start to talk to somebody.
Yeah, and then they're scared to death.
No idea.
Social anxiety.
Right. And then so if they get rejected once, which is likely for most men all of the time,
that's done.
Right. So now they're like, oh, well, I don't ever want to deal with that again. I'll just stay online and watch porn, or I'll try to find somebody who it's easier to get rejected via messages than in person.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, it creates a culture. It really creates a culture. Now, if you're a woman, on the other hand, you're receiving, I think some of the videos, if you really want to go see the difference in this, like firsthand, go watch YouTube videos online where women will make male profiles and see what it's like online, where they'll send out, let's say 100 messages a week and get back none, or get 0 replies or 0 whatever. And it's mostly because like a lot of women will receive a bunch of messages, men won't. And so it's kind of symbolic of what it is like in real life.
Right.
A man could go to the mall and talk to 10 women a day and just try to get their number, whatever, and maybe come home with none. He could do it daily and maybe get 2 phone numbers, depending. But online, it's and on the other hand, you have women who's receiving all these messages. A lot of them are, and they're content with that.
Yeah.
Right. So it becomes like, oh, the apps become more of an ego boost for a lot of women and an ego destroyer for a lot of men.
Yeah, because you're constantly putting it out, and getting nothing back in return. And then that is taking its toll on your confidence in real time and very quickly, right? Like, it's like, oh, I didn't get anything 2 to 3 days. I got to move on. Like, she must not like me, whatever. And I think that we need to talk about the fact that, and I think people do not really know this, but rejection, yes, that's a feeling, but actually rejection in our mind is processed the same as physical pain. And so there is physically a pain that is associated with rejection. It's why we all try to avoid it. And that's why, young men are not putting themselves out there, because the fear of rejection, instead of the opportunity for success, right? The fear is overtaking the opportunity for, the good to happen. So I don't know where I picked this up, but I heard you say something about how on both ends this is a little bit shallow, right? And it kind of made me. We were talking about apps and different things, and I know we're kind of. I feel like we do this thing, and we're just scatter shooting, folks. And so, one thing that we haven't talked about yet that I think is a super important topic that if we do not discuss it, we would be doing a disservice to men would be OnlyFans and what is happening there. And with that kind of platform and how it is potentially creating real problems for them.
Yeah, so I think
So what is OnlyFans?
so. OnlyFans is a website. I'm sure none of you have ever heard of it or seen it or been on it,
Never.
right? Definitely not participating.
Isn't it like the biggest generator of income? Like
Yes,
it's like wildly.
It's one of the most
popular.
independent. Yeah, I think as somebody who could do a startup, I think YouTube is second now.
Wow. Yeah.
Mostly because of men, right?
Yeah.
So
Men are fueling
our
OnlyFans.
YouTube and OnlyFans is men.
Yeah.
And so, well, that doesn't tell you something. So OnlyFans is where
Yeah.
people, mostly women, you can do it as a man too, but it's mostly women. You post images, videos, sexually explicit, or you doing essentially pornography of your own personal account, and people can subscribe to you and pay to see you in your pictures. And so nobody can see you. You can set it up to whatever you want, but nobody can see you unless you're subscribed. That type of thing. That's been, as people can realize, amazingly successful for a lot of women who are realizing or considering this to be a power, right?
Yeah.
So they can generate lots of income by just taking pictures or video. And then it turns into selfies, into full-blown pornography, group sex, all kinds of whatever you see in porn, they're doing on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Not every person does this in every way, but
somewhere along
there's a
the
scale.
lines.
Just like in porn, there's a scale from extreme to less.
Yeah.
But that's OnlyFans. And so this personalized approach where you can see let's say regular people, some people, regular women, where some people just say, okay, well, that person's attractive. Hey, they might have an OnlyFans. People will usually go to their Instagram. Instagram is the kind of the place where people find their links. People on their Instagram, kind of post a preview, maybe in a bathing suit, something like that. And then there's like links they post their to their OnlyFans. Now, what this does is it kind of makes, we were saying earlier about how women can make their own income. This is one of those things where women who were formerly working no job or as
teachers or
right,
dentists.
Right. So your teacher, dentist, server, person working at McDonald's is now making $100K a year selling pictures of themselves, nudes or videos of themselves. And so what that does is it kind of turns this idea of work into, or men into a commodity themselves.
Yeah.
Of like, how many men can I get? How much money can I get from them? And so on the other end,
all the while you're ingesting all of that affirmation, right? Like quick hits.
And the other end of that, you have men who are now who are ingesting this themselves, who are turning women even more so. Instead of just porn stars who do these things for a living, it's these people that you see online. Maybe you find out, some people are finding out their friends are doing it.
Yeah.
Their exes are doing it. And so now they're like, oh, I can pay to see them naked. And now they're treating women even more so than they could ever before into this over sexualizing them. And it's destroying their own relationships with women. And these extreme cases are kind of, again, diluting and destroying this potential romance between each other. Whatever relationship that could be had is kind of turned into a commodity of, I want to see you naked and I'll pay you.
Yeah.
And so now we're both people are looking at each other very shallowly in different ways, but it's destroying men, because a lot of times, this is the other thing I'd say, on OnlyFans, there's a messaging system. These women will hire other people to message for them, and they will have pretend relationships on almost like a strip club. You have pretend relationships with these men who are messaging them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go where a strip club would be that service. The stripper pretends to like you. You give her money for dances, that type of thing. You go here.
But at least you leave and you're
Yeah.
not there every single night, maybe.
Right. And then this, you could be on your phone in the car. You could be
All day
anywhere with
long.
it, talking to this person who's probably another dude who's
Mhm.
just posting pictures. They're just hosting the account. And so they think they're getting this relationship with this, say, hot person who they're like, ooh, I'm really, really attractive. I want this from you. And I get these pictures from you. And they're getting sold an illusion. And men will stay here. It's also so that, again, destroys any type of skill or reality of relationships and potential with women.
Yeah, because I mean, if you go out into the world and have a relationship with someone, just like just now, my husband called me and I didn't answer the phone. He couldn't immediately get in touch with me, but those people, they're always available, right?
Right. And so, essentially, right, you're selling, you're a fan of them, right? So they're selling you their personal attention with nudity, sex, pictures. You can, I think sometimes you could do requests. I'm not sure how it works, but there's whatever way you could interact with them, almost like on YouTube, you could interact with someone who's posting a video. They interact with you the same way. And so this becomes more of a personal porn star type of thing.
Yeah. And so then when, your friend set you up with so and so, like, I would assume that that's definitely not as exciting.
Yeah, the romance of meeting somebody in person. You're like, there's a risk as a man. There's a risk of getting rejected. Now I have to put on airs, probably have to pay for the dinner or whatever else is, and I'm not gonna see her naked on the first date most likely. So, or I could just give $10 to OnlyFans and have what I want. It does create a service on both ends, and it's used where porn addiction used to be. Playboys to then it was video, right? Now it's interactive porn, essentially.
Yeah.
And you can get customized videos and all kinds of things.
To the detriment of relationships,
Yeah.
right?
I'd say to the fall of family. Like that's where it goes eventually.
And how important as a man do you think realistically family is?
Well, so I'd say let's on the topic of OnlyFans, right?
Okay.
Because family is so important. Well, guess what? Let's say this woman or women, you can't really do this forever as OnlyFans. So what happens? You stop doing it. You still have all the videos and pictures that you gave away. That's still available if some man who hopes to have his wife to himself wants to date you. So now all your pictures and videos with you having sex with other men or depraved things happening to you or whatever else is for everybody else to see. And you want to marry somebody. They would have to be okay with. It's almost like I say this, it's like a social STD. You have to disclose this to somebody because they don't know that you have your whole past online. Or that if you are now in a public position, let's say you become a CEO or something else, this is forever there. Some people will have their own coworkers or people that they manage watching them online. That creates, right? And so for people who are listening to this,
that's
right,
making me uncomfortable.
Right. For a lot of people who change their lifestyle, this is a forever thing. Whatever you put on the internet assume it's forever because it is. And so even if you have a change of heart, it doesn't matter. The internet doesn't care.
Yeah.
Or here's what I say. That's the relationship part from man to woman. The other aspect is children. Your children will see you naked or have all these things happening to you online at some point. That's what will happen. And if they're not looking for it, they will be shown it at some point, whether it be algorithm or someone's being mean to them or found that your mom online decided to do all these things.
Yeah.
So I would want as a man to not ever have to deal with that. Even if the woman has her life changed and is...
That's a pretty big hurdle to jump for some people. Not
a barrier.
everybody,
Yeah,
but
it's
for
a
some.
barrier for a lot of men, I
Yeah.
would say, who don't
Interestingly
want
enough, though, we could turn around and say, oh, but it's totally okay for men to consume it and there's no trail and everybody's just okay with that. Right.
Right. So
But do you think that that pushes men who are consuming this? Let's say they get to a point and they're like, yes, I want to have a family. I want to have a relationship. Do you think that pushes them further towards a traditional person because they've experienced more of the like live and let live sexual awakening process of some people?
so like yeah, where I think in the back in the day, you if we're making generalities here, you usually you have more of your sex and your exploration in your early 20s. That's kind of okay. I know what I like, what I don't want, dating, all of that,
Mm-hmm.
and you have it later on. We're having a delay, even more of a delay, I think.
Okay.
In men who are, if you're highly addicted to porn or this specific type of porn where you're interacting with them,
Yeah.
this is creating a problem for you in every other relationship of your family.
Mhm.
It's an extreme problem for women for one way and a different one for men.
Yeah.
So like earlier when you were saying, oh, but it's okay for men, right? If generalized society, we don't think of it the same way. There's just more obvious repercussions for women when their information is out there.
Mhm.
Or for the men, it's more social, and we're already at a social deficit. I'll say as a man myself, compared to women socially.
Tell me what do you mean by that?
I mean, as far as being open and I think we talked a little bit about it last week, but just being open in general, speaking our feelings,
Got it.
learning social skills is already hard. You're putting yourself at an extreme deficit talking to a bot or a fake
Mhm.
person and interacting with this.
Yeah, because you don't have to have any really skills, right? Like it will, you may say something awkward or weird or unacceptable, and it's going to transition for you where a actual human would be like, no, they're, like absolutely not.
And
We're
I-
not going to go there.
And I would say with the advent of ChatGPT or these AIs, now they're replacing people because
Yes.
these language models can do it even better.
Mhm.
So not only you'll be rewarded in some kind of messed up weird way for being awkward or intrusive or whatever else, you could be as depraved as you want, and it will reward you with more images,
Yeah.
more videos, or whatever. So now you're actually being reinforced and trained that this is how you get your
Yeah.
kicks and your relationships in this type of way, and all they're getting money.
Mhm.
With that being said, the advent of AI has also created fake OnlyFans accounts come full circle, where now the women aren't even real.
Wow.
So that's its own thing, where that's kind of the future.
And what do you think the process of this kind of like having family later on, kind of like living this very sexualized life for men and online sexualized life for men for long periods of time, maybe into your 30s or 40s, either with, as a single person or kind of like incognito behind everyone's back? Like, what does that do?
So whenever you have something like any kind of addiction, especially specifically, I say this is closer to like a sexual addiction, social addiction,
Okay.
because it does interfere background and front with your relationship with your potential mate or the mate you already have.
Mhm.
It even messes with your views of future sexual partners and even past ones,
Mhm.
right? So while for some men I would say it's rare, who watch a porn and like I can never, I don't like that, right? It's not something I want. For most men, it's like I should probably stay away from that. For other men, it's I need it all the time. So there's hypersexuality becomes a thing. Your views on what your wife or partner and how they should treat you in bed, what you are allowed to do to them changes. All consent becomes
Blurry at best.
blurry, and even I would even say for women now, some women are becoming more um, by virtue of doing OnlyFans.
Yeah.
They're engaging in more sex acts with people they would have never before, but
Yeah.
because the bag, we call it online, they call it the bag, getting the dollar is more important. They'll blur those lines for themselves for consent too,
Yeah.
just because they want that, right? And so when men are seeing this, now there might become an expectation
Yeah.
that's the way it should be for them in their relationship.
Yeah.
And the review of their past relationships are like, oh, that wasn't working because I wasn't getting this, or oh, I need to get better at this because this is what women likes. Look at the way she does this in this video. She likes that, so I need to be doing that. BDSM, all kinds of violent acts, all kinds of wild stuff. Where now that you come essentially normalizing whatever you're watching, and that becomes a framework from which you operate.
Yeah. And I think in general, and I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but I think that there is the vulnerability, even if it's with someone you love and you care about, like as your body continues to change and as you age and different things are happening, the more I think it's likely that for most people, there is a sense of insecurity there within their own bodies, especially women, people who've had children, gained a little weight, all the things are happening. And if you find out that like your husband is online participating in this kind of activity, I don't know if there's because again, that goes back to the trust factor, right? And we're talking about keeping secrets and we're talking about all these sensitive things on the other end of that, because you're talking about definitely the detriments that come to men itself, but the relationship, and from a woman's perspective, these are the things that have now been hit. I can't trust you, which means I can't trust you in anything, not just on sexual things and in our intimacy. I can't trust you to throw the trash. I can't trust you to get home and the car be intact. I can't trust you to pick up the children. And so then I think there's a tendency to do what happens sometimes is like the woman becomes overbearing on a man. And I know that is a common issue that men are dealing with, especially in, we'll say, long-term relationships or in marriage. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that end, thank you for that perspective on it, because I think there's a lot of men who think it's just only a personal issue when you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I would say most women don't like their men watching porn. Right. And some don't care. Maybe they should. Some men have a problem with it already, but it definitely affects the trust that she has with you as a man. There's lots of reasons why she wouldn't like you watching it, but there's also reasons for that you'd be hiding it from her. If you ever feel like you have to hide it, there's an issue there. And even if you're just doing it on occasion, or you think she wouldn't care, it's an issue. And I think that frame that she sees you in now changes when she realizes you're capable of hiding things or doing something sexually.
Yeah.
If she already has, and I'd say a lot of women do already have body issues, insecurity issues with themselves, and you're watching porn, it's definitely going to trigger something in her that should be triggered because you're doing something you shouldn't be doing and you're hiding it. Right.
So now you're dealing with two people's different perspectives and it's blowing up on you.
Yeah. And so the obvious solution would be to abstain. That would be that. And now if you can't abstain, there might be something going on there with addiction or unmet need, possibly. And I would say sometimes, put the horse before the carriage, but sometimes you come into a relationship with this issue. I'd say it's another social STD, your own addiction, right? Or things aren't going well in the marriage, and women tend to have different libidos than men. And if things aren't going well, they tend to not want to have sex. So a man will turn to porn to scratch that itch, and then it becomes a full-blown addiction.
Yeah.
And now you have you're essentially bringing a third woman or a second woman into this relationship. And that's nothing most women don't want. In a marriage, especially.
So let's talk about what you might feel like some unmet needs are for men in this, like in the society we're kind of operating in right now.
I'd say in general or sexually. Okay.
Hey, but maybe both.
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
So
to have a look at everything.
we'll branch out from sexual then and say, some men have had only one partner, two partners their whole life, which is fine. At some point, a lot of men would like to do different things, try different things in the bedroom. This is the intimacy thing. And maybe they're afraid of bringing that up with their partner. And so they will watch porn. They will see it happen. They'll see it happening, engage, which isn't really great for anybody at that point. But in that need is one. I'd say just generally sexually, a lot of men aren't having any sex. And so it's an unmet need.
Yeah.
That sex is serving.
I saw, I can't remember the stat, but it was talking about men over 30 and how very few are having sex. And the people who are having the most sex, guys, are married Christians. Wildly enough. I know you don't believe me.
Right.
Yes.
The conservative stud, apparently.
Yeah.
with
those are the
married.
Yeah, those are the people who are
Right.
having the most sex.
Right.
And so I could see how that would be a point to that is being pushed out to people, a
Yeah.
narrative, right? What are some other unmet needs? We kind of hit some sexual. What else?
Right. Well, intimacy is the branch of that. General intimacy. Yeah. Men get a lot of their intimacy through that interaction.
But does that mean then that good communication has not been established if you can't talk about what you want in like the sexual bedroom?
In some ways, yes, and other, I would say that, but the reasons why, one of them for men would also be trauma.
Okay.
Sometimes not dealing with your trauma or not wanting to really talk about it in general kind of overlaps, and there's sexual. Men have sexual trauma too, and so sometimes that's a big barrier for intimacy. So sometimes it stops communication from happening.
Do you think that's laced in the shame and embarrassment would live there?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of shame, and so not really processing some of that pain, or let's say if they're more depraved, whatever his kink might be that he doesn't want to bring up with his wife. Sometimes it goes to a more extreme. He recognizes this, and it's a trauma.
Yeah.
And so reliving trauma is one of those things that happens when you experience it. You tend to observe it or act it out sometimes, especially if you were younger. And so those type of things can also create a barrier. In general, men in society, I think we talked about this last time, is like we're not as open for lots of reasons, and really just being heard and accepted, and we have to be tough, or all these stereotypes that we have to be makes it harder to communicate if we're not taken seriously.
Okay. What else can you think of unmet needs, like societally, that you just recognize in men in general? I think men don't have friends. Weird enough.
I was just talking to the wife about it on the way here.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I said this last time, but
yeah,
I really think
yeah.
this is like, it is so in the forefront of my.
So intimacy, right? Intimacy, not just relationship, romance, but with just your bros, your dudes.
Yeah.
And a lot, I told like some of my best friends, they moved away. The only time we talk is when we get to play games.
Yeah.
And so I play games with them, and that's where we talk. Those are the people who live, and then you have other people who you go see who live nearby, right? But that time spent is super, super important to really blow off steam. One, people be around people who understand you, get you. Don't even have to be around the same age. I know a lot of dudes have friend groups ranging. There's an old dude down the corner we like to go talk to and drink with.
Yeah.
And I go play football with, and then I go jujitsu with my mechanic.
Yeah.
Like it runs the gambit. Guys, go make friends. And I would even say what we were talking about, but women, I've heard this from women that they envy the way men can just be cool with each other.
Yeah.
That there are no, there's nothing fake between us. And so whether that's more of a comment on how women are with each other or men, but we really can just go up and talk, but it's really getting past that, like, hey, what's up? And being cool. And like, so how does a guy go up and be like, well, can we hang out?
Yeah.
That's awkward.
Yeah.
That's awkward for a lot of men. But being online or on the internet, seems to be a lot easier. Like I said,
Yeah.
especially with this generation, the easy add a friend and chat.
Yeah.
But meeting up in person, I think, is super important.
Yeah. And I think that the barrier to that for men, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I've had lots of conversations with my husband as well, is like we call it the BDS, big dick syndrome. Sorry guys, but that's the reality of like when men start a conversation, it's like, hey man, what do you do? It's all like identity is so wrapped into like, what's your job title? How much money do you make? Like, what do what do you have to offer me in this relationship? And once they can get past the ego or the BDS, then then it gets really easy for them. Whereas for women, I think the gentle startup is easy. But the actual long-term relationship without like comparison and the cattiness and the jealousy and all these types of things that can sometimes be present. I'm not saying always are, but can sometimes are to the detriment.
And I agree. And what I say to a lot of men, the easiest way to do to make a friend is to do an activity. Doing an activity kind of makes it playing neutral ground. We're doing, or you meet up to go do A, B, C, or D. You might not be the fastest guy on the court, but you could play defense. You know, your hands might not be good, but you could throw, right? Yeah. So go doing an activity together. It kind of puts us all on even grounds where we don't really have to do the the chest puff to be like, my I'm secure. You're, well, what do you got, right? So there is that light insecurity that comes up with, people call it machismo, whatever it else is. But a lot of times, some of that can also fuel really good friendships.
Yeah.
Because sometimes some of your best friends aren't somebody you spill all your secrets to or whatever, but they keep you motivated and keep you going.
Yeah.
And like they'll send you a picture like, oh, I did 10 reps at 325. And you're like, oh, and you send them it back and I did 10 reps at 327.
Yes.
So like something like that, we're like, huh, you know what? Some of that competition, men can thrive and do thrive on that.
100%.
And that is something that is underserved.
Yes.
For each other, because I think a lot of men kind of get sedentary.
Yeah.
With their own ambitions or physically or really reaching their potential, and seeing somebody else, being around other people who are reaching their potential in some kind of way.
Yeah.
If it's similar enough to you, it's going to be contagious.
Yeah.
Make them your friend.
And I think competition is something that has to be taught and established in young people as well. And I think that has been something that has now like had some kind of like naughty word that we're going to have some competition. And the reason I say that is, like you said, do an activity, get engaged with people. And I've been seeing so much data regarding the fact that 70% of kids are quitting sports by the time they're 13 years old because of the competition piece of it. Mm-hmm. And that can be the over competitive nature of these, what do they call those leagues? The travel league things, club sport type club things. Sport, yeah. So like find the place that makes sense for you and your children. It does not have to be like this highly competitive league, but competition doesn't have to be this big naughty word. And ribbing between men is super important. Like yes. Yeah. And I think that as like young people are trying to like learn how to do that, but they're not doing it well. And then we immediately are like, oh, they're saying horrible things to each other. And really they're just trying to be dudes, together in this world. And they're going to mess up. They are going to overstep. They are not going to know their limits. And that's where you come in and put a limit in, but you don't say like, this is highly inappropriate, because this is how men are men together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you tell them this is a no, then they stop developing the skills sometimes. And I see that a lot.
I think there's not enough grace given to men.
Yeah, 100%.
In fact, it's been taken away.
Yeah, I think so.
And whether
held hostage a little bit.
Sure. Whether it be romantically, right? Or I'd say more from women in that way, but also the expectation, you don't have to be perfect.
No.
Like no person is. And men, when you're hanging out with the other dudes, I would say most men aren't gonna cry if you said something a little insensitive, right?
No.
It's just that, you're like, hey man, that was whack. Don't say that because this actually happened to me. Like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
dude. That's all it will be. That's we really are. It takes like 5 seconds, and so if you're worried about that, don't let that be the barrier. In
Yeah.
fact, most interactions, I'll say this: if you read most men's groups chats, it is they say the most horrible things to each other out of love.
Yes.
It really is, and that's how we are, right?
Yes.
And it's we find it funny.
Yeah.
It's some of the best stuff. So their nicknames, horrible nicknames sometimes, but some of the best. I had a friend who worked as a photographer at the Spurs,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, I can't believe. She's like, do y'all? She asked me, she's like, do y'all say it stuff like that all the time? I was like, what? She's like, they were calling each other, all kinds of. I was like, oh yeah, that's just
100%.
that's what you do.
Yeah, 100%. It's the, I guess what was once called and termed locker room talk that somehow took on this super negative connotation, and not all of it was all bad. It's just like anything. Are there people who take things too far, say super inappropriate things that should not be going on? Absolutely. And are there people who are just ribbing each other, giving each other a hard time? And I mean, I think like as a woman that has friends, long-term friends, and who grew up in locker rooms, that was very much a culture that I was very open to, and that so anyways, and I kind of think about, if you want to see like a little bit of like what it looks like for men to interact with each other, or men, if you're really craving some interaction and unfortunately you're just having a hard time getting started, I always suggest, and this is probably not going to be super popular, I'll be really honest, but I love these, but I always suggest Joe Rogan's Save the Parks episode.
Oh, Save Our Parks.
Save Our Parks episode.
Yeah.
It's 3 or 4 guys getting together. They're ribbing each other. They're talking about some of the topics. They may have controversial takes. Don't get caught in the middle of it. It's the just guys being guys together.
Right. And I think, especially with the comedians, right?
Yeah.
Being funny.
It's hilarious.
Right. I think this is a skill men can learn, to be funny and take yourself not so seriously.
Yes.
I think everybody should learn that, but especially with dudes hanging around other dudes, you're gonna
I think comedy was scary for a while.
Yes. Oh, well, I think what you were saying earlier with locker room talk that kind of came out.
Yeah.
Well, you started being able to record locker room talk, put it online. Now these things are taken out of context and put on the internet, and everybody shames it, and then it comes back full circle to the people in real life. We're like, well, I guess I can't say those things anymore or hear them.
Yes.
But that's not reality. Reality is these things.
Well, and happen. Then project judgment, right? Project judgment on them, despite the fact that I wish I was kind of doing it. But project judgment. Let me tell you how bad or wrong you are, because it's going to give me social points with, in these types of places, in corporate USA and whatever. And like, honestly, you are not going to have mental health in those places.
And I would say you'll get more social points if you participated with them. That's exactly what would happen.
Yeah.
You'd be better off amongst people that you love talking to you that way than judging other people for living their lives happily.
Yeah. So what I would say is, if you can't tell, we are not the medication model. We don't think everyone is broken and needs to be fixed. We just think that people are sometimes have some unmet needs that they don't even recognize are unmet at times, and they're filling it up in places and spaces that are unhealthy and not great for them. And we're asking them to identify some behaviors, be open to changing some behaviors, and trying new things.
Yes, absolutely. Go out, try new things, change your perspective, and men, stay away from these pitfalls. Be around other men who are on their game. Ask them questions. Everyone likes to talk about themselves at some point. Just go ask questions, and really go, find some friends who are like-minded and not like-minded. Mix it up. Really create that, because that creates a better community, a better world.
Yeah. I don't know. You tell me. I think like the greatest way of like, I say the best version of like my husband, the one that I adore and am fond of, is not the one that is like taking care of everything and is like all over everything and making sure he's got it done perfectly and all the things. The best version of him is the one that asks for help. That is to me the best version of my husband, the one that says like, "Oh, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here." And like that is so good for my heart, because honestly, if he had it all figured out, I would feel the pressure to have it all figured out. And so it eases that. And don't get me wrong, we went through a time where, when you're young and you think you're supposed to have it all figured out, where that was a pressure point,
Right.
and then you learn from those mistakes. And so what I would say is, in your relationship, if you can be honest with your spouse or with the people you're trying to have relationship with, that is more than half the battle. And if you can be vulnerable,
Yeah, it's really, be human.
yeah, just a human.
You're just a human. I think whatever you're seeing online about the way you should think this, or only
Yeah.
be this way, or you're this if you're not thinking this way, right?
Yeah.
You have all these frames that it's not reality.
Yeah.
You're just a person trying to live your life.
Yeah.
And if anybody treats you differently, that's not a person for you. And
Yeah.
I'd say probably stay offline. If you can go a week without your phone, I tell people that all the time. It's like, if you just use it for work, if you can go a week without being on the internet,
Yeah.
you'll change.
Well, it's there's some data that comes out that said like you would reverse like aging in your brain by some crazy amount of years by just taking some breaks, like 1 or 2 weeks, like
Yeah.
just very little.
We need them. We really need them.
Yeah. So I guess that's it for us this week. We hope you enjoyed hearing from us. We'll check back in probably next week and maybe have another perspective regarding men and mental health. And really what we're just doing here is men and health, because mental health is not anything independent from your physical health. It's all together. And so we just want the best for everyone, and for them to seek out their unmet needs and to feel valued and important. And what I would say is, men, you belong here. We need you. And you're important. And what you bring to the table is amazing. And don't forget it.
Thank you.
All right. See you next week.